Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is Nick from ForexNoobs.com with the daily analysis. Today is one second guys. Sorry, one of my scripts isn't running. I use scripts to float this window above so it doesn't sink behind. But oh. There we go. I like having the chat window floating above, so I created a script which allows it to float above, and I just realized it wasn't active, but now it is, so the chat window's floating above, which is fantastic. Righto, let's get down to the analysis, guys. Today is Tuesday, the 3rd of March, 2020. Time is 10:02 here in the UK. You're looking at a GBPJPY daily chart. Today's analysis, we're going to be looking for price action setups across all these pairs listed to the right here. So yeah, let's just dive right into it, guys. GBPJPY moved quite a bit last week. The market has been moving in general quite a bit. This, as far as I can tell, is mostly due to the coronavirus. As it spreads, the markets are going into fear mode more and more. So I think we might be in for quite a bumpy few weeks. Now, usually at a time like this, there's two major options. The first option is to just not trade until this thing is over. For a lot of us, that's not really practical. For me personally, it's not. Well, it is technically practical because I've got I'm set up in a way that I have multiple streams of income. So if there's ever a period where I can't trade for several weeks or several months, I'll still be okay financially. It's not like I'm going to be starving. And that's, if you've gone into trading full time, that's the way you want to be set up. You want to be set up in a way that financially, trading isn't your only source of income, because trading depends on you actually trading. And if you're sick, if you're hurt, if you're whatever, you can't trade. Therefore, you're not making any money. So a long time ago, I've set it up so that I have multiple streams of income and I'm not solely reliant on trading, because there's going to be periods where I can't trade. Luckily, there hasn't been yet, but it's definitely a possibility. Anyway, this is all to say that option number one is to just not trade until this coronavirus thing is over. Now, while that is technically feasible for me, I'd still rather not do it. I'd still rather trade through this thing, and I am going to try and trade through this thing. So, yeah, those are the two options. Don't trade until it's over, or trade through it. Just implement some rules that lower the impact that these crazy market swings are going to have, right? So implement some rules. Generally, when we talk about implementing rules, it's mostly risk management based rules. Also, possibly the avoidance of some pairs, although that's seeming less and less likely given that Corona has spread all over the world. So before, we could say perhaps avoid the Aussie dollar because it's linked to China, and it was mostly in China, but now it's spread everywhere, so we can't really avoid all the currencies from countries in which Corona is present, because that would mean that we can't trade anything at the moment. So mostly the rules we want to look at implementing are risk management rules. Now, when I implement risk management rules, the way I usually do it is I just lower my overall risk per trade. So let's say that normally, and this is just for ease of numbers, not my actual risk. Let's say I normally risk 2% per trade. Well, in a time like this, I might drop that down by 50%. So I'd be risking 1% per trade. So again, this is for ease of numbers. These aren't my actual numbers. Let's say I would normally lose $1,000 on a trade if my stop loss is hit. Now I'm losing $500 on that trade. Obviously, these aren't real numbers because I don't trade in dollars, but I just find dollars is always easier because most of the world is using dollars. US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. So it's easier to visualize for most people. So if I'm risking $1,000 on a normal trade, now I'm going to be risking $500. That's just an example of some very, very basic risk management rules you can implement. Also, you guys try and stay on top of the news. For example, things like China is kind of starting to reopen for business. It closed down for quite some time. It lowered the spread of the virus significantly in China. But our factories started reopening yesterday. So we could be seeing an end to this massive, massive drop that we saw on the Aussie dollar. Stuff like that. So just trying to stay on top of the news, try to keep informed on what's going on. So basically, to summarize, you have two options. Just stay out of the market until Corona is over. That might mean you're out of the market for 6 months, so not entirely feasible for most people. For me personally, I'm going to be trading through this period with reduced risk. And yeah, let's get into the analysis. I just wanted to get that out of the way first. Just go over how I'm going to be trading through that because it's been a bit of a hot topic. I've been getting a lot of emails about what am I going to do with the coronavirus stuff happening, etc. So I just thought let's clear that out of the way at the start of this analysis. If you guys have any questions, any further questions about that, please do let me know. Let's take a quick look at the news. Interestingly, I read yesterday that these G7 meetings that are going to be held today, they're an emergency meeting, I believe, for the coronavirus. They are being held by telephone to reduce the risk of travel. All these important politicians don't want to be traveling all over the world and risking getting the coronavirus, so they're bunkering down as much as they possibly can in their jobs, and they're going to be doing this G7 meeting over the phone. This is just the generic notes. Yeah, but G7, this G7, the topic of discussion is the coronavirus and the world's, how the world's going to react to it, how the G7 countries are going to react to it. It seems like they're finally doing something because most of the G7 countries have not really been doing that much. They've just been like pretending it's not happened for a while. But now that it seems like they're kind of doing something. So let's see how those go today. Also, the cash rate in Australia was actually cut. It went from 0.75 to 0.5. This was forecast. It was heavily priced in. So it hasn't had a huge impact on the Aussie dollar because it was completely expected. So, it had a small, it came out at 3:30 a.m. It had, let's go down another 30-minute. It had a small spike at 3:30, but it was priced in. Everyone knew it was coming. I was actually considering kind of taking a bit of a risky trade on the idea that they weren't going to cut rates. I didn't end up taking it. It wouldn't have mattered anyway because it wouldn't have moved it at all, really. So I wouldn't have lost anything, but I wouldn't have gained anything either. So what is coming up over the next few days, besides the G7 meetings, which, they could have an impact on the market, guys. They definitely could. Tomorrow at 12:30 a.m. we have the GDP out of Australia. So that's obviously an important one for the Aussie dollar, but it shouldn't really impact the market too much. So I'm not too worried about that. We have the ADP non-farm employment change. It's not something I generally worry about either. And then we have the BOC rate statement, but we'll discuss these more in detail tomorrow because for today, there's no other news happening, and we'll just focus on today, and tomorrow. The only thing that is happening before the next webinar, like I said, is this Aussie GDP, which I'm not too concerned about. So switching back over to the charts, let's look for some actual trade setups. Finally, we're at that point in the analysis where we look for trade setups. We had 11 minutes of talking about other stuff, but here we are. We had a great last few weeks. It's been pretty awesome. Let's see if we can continue that trend of awesomeness. Kicking things off with GBPJPY. This one was quite a mover. I've placed some new support resistance areas on GBPJPY. There's no setup that I see here at the moment, so I'm not going to be trading anything here. The setup that was there has been closed out already, the short setup from last week. So yeah, there's nothing really happening there anymore. GBP AUD, this was a short we had last week. I shared this with you guys in, I believe, Wednesday or Tuesday's analysis last week. This one ended up failing. I got out with a pretty small loss. Obviously, some people kept the trade open until it hit their stop loss. So this one was our first loss, well, at least my first loss in a while. It wasn't a major loss. I'm not really that bothered with it. Ended up going down eventually. It just shot up and hit where the stop loss was before it went down. I ended up getting out with around about half the size of my stop loss, so around about here is where I closed out. Some people closed out at break even because they just didn't like what they were seeing when... Let's zoom in and let me explain. So I'll just give you a breakdown of what people following my strategy did, because not everyone traded it the exact same way. Some people didn't like the fact that this candle wasn't pushing lower straight away, so they closed out, with a little tiny bit of profit or a break even. Some people held on for a little bit longer, like me, and closed out at around about 50% of their original stop loss. Some people just held on all the way to the stop loss. I don't think anyone had a wide enough stop that they got saved from being stopped out on this one. Maybe they did, but they haven't told me about it. New Zealand USD, nothing much going on there anymore. There was a potential long there last week, or a potential short rather. But yeah, nothing going on there anymore. Yeah, I'm more leaning towards longs on New Zealand USD at the moment, given that China's opening for business. I'm just not really. I think we might see a recovery on New Zealand USD and AUD USD. So even though we could potentially justify a short continuation here, I'm not convinced that it's going to happen. So I'm just going to leave that one. Got pairs that need some support resistance updates, but unfortunately we can't really get support resistance updates, because if we look back on USDCHF, we see that this is in fact an all-time low, or if it's not an all-time low, it's at least an 19-year low. So I'm not sure if USDCHF in the 90s was lower than this, but this is a very significant low for USDCHF. So we don't really have any support resistance areas we can place. In a situation like this, you just have to wait for support resistance to form. So we're going to knock this one off the list. USDJPY, this one dropped quite a bit last week. This is a pretty interesting... What I'm looking for in USDJPY right now, it's moving a lot, so this might not happen. But I'm looking for a bounce from the support area. So I want it to hit this support area before going long. So I'm going to keep a close eye on this one. And we'll just wait and see what happens with it. Euro NOK, no support, no resistance areas can be placed because it's at all-time highs. Actually, I believe it's all-time highs. Yeah, it is. Euro New Zealand, we can do some support resistance here. The first one's pretty obvious. It's going to go here in line with these bounces from September 2019. Yeah, next one goes at this peak. But there's no current set up there, so let's drop this one off the list also. It does look like GBPUSD might be turning around and heading back up to resistance, but I just don't really see a viable entry here, because if we get in right now, the risk to reward ratio just won't be great. Yeah, I'm not really liking this. I was looking at it yesterday, but just hasn't really panned out. All right, let's look for some new setups. See if we can find anything in these current conditions. Yeah, so I'm not too sure about trading a DJPY right now. I think we might see a recovery on the Aussie dollar, like I said. Yeah, with these crazy moves, I get a feeling that we might just have to wait for things to settle over the next day or two. I don't think we're going to see very many setups, guys. Yeah, I don't really like these support resistance areas that I just placed. They're not great. They are in fact almost completely baseless. The only halfway decent one is this resistance area here, but can't find anything between there. It doesn't really matter. I'm just placing them to place them. There's no setup there. Yeah, nothing here. Ooh, we finally have something. What is this support area based on? Okay, it does have some history in 2017, does have a bounce in 2019. It's an okay support area. It's not a particularly strong support area, but price is stalling out on support right now on GBPCHF. So let's look for a potential long here after this candle closes. So after today's candle closes, if tomorrow's candle starts pushing up, there's potential for a long there. Not terribly excited over that setup, but in a market anyway. Okay, that makes sense. I'm not going to trade there. Like I said, GBPUSD does look like that it's turning around. I'm not really convinced about taking a trade here. Yeah. Not really a great support area. Thing is, when you go back to 2009, the market was moving very different, so you can't really place support resistance areas based on these moves from 2009. And even then, if you were to place them, they're pretty old support areas. So we don't really have much to go on New Zealand USD. USDCHF, we have some interesting stuff, but it's a bit of a quiet Tuesday, guys. But USDCHF is dropping down to support. This one's quite interesting because it's a pretty sharp drop here on USDCHF over the last few days. And this is a strong support area. It has held price back. I know it doesn't look that great when I'm zooming out, but I'm just zooming out so you guys can see all the bounces it's had. It's a lot easier to fit it all in. So we can see here, 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 here. So it's quite a strong support area. So price is hitting the support area right now. It's already reacted when it hit it yesterday by pulling back quickly. So what I'm looking for is price to fall into the support area, settle here, and then potentially trade a reversal from here. Yeah, that's the other thing, Colin. It's NFP week this week. I don't think I mentioned that, but as everyone knows, the first Friday of the month is NFP week, or non-farm employment change as it's called these days. It's a big highest impact report on the Forex market, and usually on these weeks things tend to be a bit slower than normal. Nothing much happening on these. Yeah, okay. So guys, it's a pretty quiet start to the week. I'm not really seeing that much here, to be completely honest. This is all I'm seeing right now. USDCHF potential long from support, GBPCHF potential long from support, and USDJPY. There's not a lot going on, but if it drops down and hits the support, might have an interesting opportunity to buy. Yeah. So yeah, guys, quiet start to the week. Coronavirus is really having an impact on the markets. There's not many trades here that I'm looking at taking at this point, but I am going to be keeping an eye on things this week. I still will be trading through the coronavirus with some reduced risk. My plan right now is to reduce my risk by around 50%. Depending on the setup, I might reduce it by 25% on some setups, 50% on most setups. And I'm just going to go from there. I'll be looking at trading the lower time frames also via the chat room. I feel a lot more comfortable about taking those lower time frame trades because they don't last anywhere near as long as my longer time frame trades. So there's less risk of news coming out while the trade's open and causing, crazy spikes. So today I'll be focusing mostly on lower time frames because I'm not seeing much on the higher time frames, and that's possibly going to be happening for the rest of the week. I'll still be doing my analysis on the larger time frames. I'll still be looking for setups, but I'll focus on trading some of the lower time frames as long as there's not many setups on the large ones. So yeah, guys, that wraps it up for the analysis. Are there any questions? All right, guys, it doesn't look like there's any questions, so I'm going to wrap this one up. If you guys who are watching this as a recording have any questions, feel free to ask me on the forum or just send me an email or just send me a Skype message. Any way you want. I'll be around today and tomorrow and the next day. I'll be looking for trades. I'll update via the forum if I see anything changing in terms of trade setups on the larger timeframes. And I'll be keeping an eye on the chat room today for some lower timeframe trades. I haven't been in the chat room yet today, but I'm going to pop in right after this webinar and take a look, see how things are going. So thank you guys very much for attending, and I'll see you for tomorrow's analysis, which should be at 10 a.m. Thank you and bye.